This video was selected for release this month by my doll faces and pop tarts over on Patreon. Much love to you as always. Hello fellow card slingers, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are new around here, my name is Kelly-Ann-Maddox and I'm a full-time professional award-winning card slinger. And I suppose you could say that that means that I have a little bit of a vested interest in breaking down some of the myths and the misinformation that does the rounds year after year in the tarot world. I don't know where these weird myths come from, but it's time for them to die. And I still see them around, you know, so I basically want to break down 10 of the tarot myths that I commonly still see that I would like to reassure you are not correct and they are not the way things need to be done. There is so much amazing information out there these days about tarot. There are so many epic card slingers doing their thing, writing books, making videos, creating learning resources. And I think that's amazing. And I like to think I've been a part of that as well. But there is still a load of old trollop that really needs to be examined. It needs to be looked at and we need to push it aside because I think it's only restricting people and hemming people in on their tarot journey, and we just don't need it. So allow me to break down some of the key pieces of information that you might see in the card slinger world that I don't think makes that much sense and is actually more trouble than it's worth. Okay, let me break some of these down for you. Number one, you should not buy your own tarot deck. You need to be gifted your tarot deck, at least your first tarot deck, if not all the others that you own. But definitely I've seen that when you start wanting to learn to read tarot, you need to be gifted a deck. I don't know where this one came from. Where did this come from? People still say this to this day, and I do not understand the origins of it, but I fear that it makes absolutely no sense because I think actually the opposite is probably true. If you want to get the absolute best experience out of learning tarot, probably you should be the one to select the imagery that is most aligned with you and who you are and what suits your personality. So really, if anything was going to be a piece of misinformation, I wish it would be the opposite, which is that you cannot work with a gifted deck. But actually, neither of them are true, my darlings. You can work with decks that are gifted. You can work with a deck that you've purchased. You do not need to wait to start your tarot learning journey until somebody gifted you a deck as a present or you ask somebody to go out and select one for you. Again, I really would love to know the origin of this one, but wherever it came from, it's dead wrong. Many people actually do start learning tarot with a gifted deck, and that is because they didn't think of beginning to learn tarot until somebody gifted them a deck or they inherited a deck as kind of like a hand-me-down or somebody was getting rid of one. Like that was the case with me. I got given a deck as a young teenage girl by a family friend, and then I got given another deck by an auntie a couple of years later, and this sparked my interest in tarot. I didn't think one day, oh, I'd love to learn tarot. I didn't know what tarot was until someone gave me a deck. And that is very true of a lot of people's journeys, right? And that's great. But there are many other people that are sitting on their hands for a while thinking, I need someone to gift me a deck. No, you do not. In fact, if anything, you want to go and select the imagery that you enjoy. The earliest memory that I have of accelerating my tarot learning was when I really decided, you know what, I want to be a tarot reader for sure. I want to be able to read the cards for real. This is not just a little sort of teenage dalliance anymore. This is not a phase. I want this badly. And at that point, I went out and I purchased my own deck that really suit my personality. And that for me is where the rubber actually met the road, to be honest. That's one of the key level up moments that I remember in my practice. So yeah, you do not need to be gifted a deck to start reading. Number two, this is the next, let's say, piece of misinformation that I see doing the rounds quite a lot. And that is that the best deck to learn tarot with is the Rider-Waite-Smith. I can understand why people say that because the Rider-Waite-Smith is the template deck for a great many contemporary decks that we find on the market today. So I always say Rider-Waite-Smith spawned a million bastard children, okay? So many of the contemporary decks that we work with take their influence and their inspiration from the classic Rider-Waite-Smith tarot. And so I can understand why people say that as a matter of caution and as a matter of practicality, you start with the Rider-Waite-Smith, and that gives you an underlying understanding of so many of the decks that you may later want to go on and use. So I can understand that. However, you don't need to start with Rider-Waite-Smith in order to be able to use the Rider-Waite-Smith concept, because like I said, there are so many contemporary decks that take influence from it that might suit you more as a reader. For example, the original Rider-Waite-Smith is not very diverse. It's not very diverse in terms of the characters that you actually see in the deck. It's also a very specific color palette. It's got a very specific like fashion and era to it that you might not enjoy as a reader. So why not go and find some imagery that you are more taken with? The Rider-Waite-Smith holds a very special place in a lot of card slingers' hearts, but it does not hold the monopoly on being a good practice deck. I think what people mean to say when they recommend Rider-Waite-Smith so hard is that they are recommending that, yes, you go with something that is the same template as so many of the other decks are. And secondly, you go with something that has illustrated minors, okay? So the Rider-Waite-Smith has illustrated minors. That means that when you grab 10 of wands, you don't just see 10 wands on a card, you know, like you would with some of the older style of deck. You actually see a man holding 10 wands. So you have context clues as to what the card is about, right? 6 of Cups, it's not just 6 cups on a card, which is very difficult to remember what the meaning is when you're first learning. You get the context clues, you get this beautiful garden scenario. So I think really what people should suggest is that you just make sure you get a deck with illustrated minors. Don't get pip cards because it might be difficult to remember them. I just want to say though, I have met a great many card slingers who did learn with pip decks. They learned with non-illustrated minors and they're absolutely fine. In fact, they say that it made their knowledge of the numerology in tarot stronger. I think that's amazing, really impressive. I couldn't have learned with non-illustrated minors. That would have done my fucking head in, okay? I have dyscalculia as it is, so I do not want to emotionally connect with numbers. Give me the fucking context clues, okay? I want the context clues. Number 3, you should not read tarot for yourself. You should not give yourself tarot readings. This is one that I've definitely seen, and it's one that people ask me. They say, Kellyanne, can I read tarot for myself? Because I've been told by another reader or I've read somewhere that you shouldn't do that. And this myth is based on the idea that we are not our own best advisors and that we are likely to warp and manipulate the messages that are coming from the cards to fit our narrative. In other words, we're going to look at the reading and it's going to say what we want it to say. We're not going to be super honest about what we're seeing because we're going to make it fit what we want it to say. I think it's very possible to do a reading for yourself if you're going to keep in mind that you might not be ready to understand some of the messages that are there and that you might need to work extra hard to push yourself out of your comfort zone to really witness the warning signs that are in the cards and the shadow aspects of the cards that you might not be ready to see yet, you know? If a reader knows that they are just way too close to the situation to be able to give themselves a fair reading, then fair enough, they can go and get a reading from someone else. And I know that I've done that. I've definitely known that I am not best placed to do a reading for myself because there is clearly something about the situation that I am not willing to see. And so I take that to another trusted reader and I get them to draw cards for me. But there have been many, many times when I know that I am willing to see the medicine of the cards. I am willing to ingest it, even if it tastes a little bit horrible going down, and therefore I've been okay to do a reading for myself. So it's more about you assessing that for yourself personally. Don't let anybody else tell you when you can and cannot use cards for yourself. You need to tune in with you and make that decision personally. You are emotionally intelligent enough to contextualize and place value upon the advice that you receive from any avenue. You know, so if you ask a friend or a partner for advice on what's going on with you, they're going to give you advice that would be different from the advice that you would get from your parent, which would be different from the advice that you would get from your therapist, which would be different again from the advice that you would get through reading books on the subject that have been designed for people with your problem, right? All of those forms of advice are going to have their value, and all of those forms of advice are going to have their limits in context. And it's the same for the advice that you get from the cards that you give to yourself. That advice is going to have great value. It's going to be something that you came up with from your heart and your intuition and your relationship with the cards, which is amazing. It's going to be different from any other kind of advice you might receive, but it's going to have its limits. It might be that it is difficult for you to see some of the warning elements and some of the shadow elements and the tough love that comes up from the cards. And so just like with any kind of advice you receive, it has its value and it has its limits. You are emotionally intelligent enough to understand that. Number 4, there are positive and negative tarot cards.
No! Oh, God!
I hate this one. This is a massive annoyance for me as a professional reader because it butchers the tool. It cheapens the tool, in my personal opinion. I do not like any resources that imply that there are some tarot cards that are good and there are some that are bad. I really don't like this. I just think that it really boils every card down into something way more simplistic than it should be. All tarot cards are like human beings, okay? They have their public faces, their public personas, and then they have their deeper facets, and then they have their hidden secrets. You have a relationship, a personal relationship with every single one of the 78 cards in the deck, and that relationship evolves and it changes and it deepens over time as your relationship with each of the cards becomes more intimate as you go along in your study of each of them. So not only does the meaning of the card not remain static to you, but there's no way, if you know the card deeply enough, that you can see it as all good or all bad, because there is no human being that is all good or all bad all the time in every situation. That's way too much of a simplistic viewpoint. And so if we wouldn't think that way about most human beings, we shouldn't think that way about tarot cards, okay? They're just so much more complex than that. You know what I do when I'm trying to get to know a human being? I try to avoid hard and fast assumptions. I try to avoid mind reading or coming up with this idea of who they are before I've really allowed them to speak. And I try to avoid pigeonholing them. I try to avoid judging them too quickly. And that's exactly what I would advise you to do with your tarot study as well. Avoid judging the cards heavy-handedly. Avoid telling yourself that you know them by sight or that you know them by one heavy-handed interpretation of them. All cards have a spectrum of light and shadow, dormant and active, conscious and unconscious. If you have some cards in your deck that are like wholly negative, you think they're totally bad, how are you going to be able to read for those cards when they come up in a position like, what is my strength? You know, or what is the positive side of this situation? If you get a card in a position like that you see as a negative card, you're stumped. You cannot do the reading properly because you've not taken the time to understand what the positives of that card were. Another thing that kind of falls into this category as well is the very literal interpretations of cards, right? So death means someone's going to die. Justice means there's going to be a court case. The Empress means someone's going to get pregnant. Stop.
Stop it. Get some help.
Please, you're butchering it. You're ruining it. Just stop it. Number 5, you need to be psychic to be a tarot reader. And by psychic, I'm presuming that when this comes up, the person saying it means you need to be clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient, or you need to be able to read for the future. You need to be able to have a premonition of what is going to happen in somebody's situation. This one is a problem because it's just really enforcing a dogma around what tarot readers are supposed to believe. There are so many different kinds of people that use tarot. There are people that use it for strategizing, you know, there are people that use it for planning, there are people that use it for meditation, there are people that use it with their creative work in order to spark ideas or to figure out how projects are going to move forward. There's just so many different types of people using the tool. There are therapists that use it in their sessions, you know, there's all kinds of different people that use it in their listening, helping practice. Many psychics use tarot, but many psychics don't use tarot. There are many psychics that don't use any tools at all. They just tune into their clairs and their precognition and their ability to be able to, like, you know, like to see through the veil of the future, and they give you the answer. They don't need cards to be able to do that. Tarot has a much more broader user base than that. So if you don't consider yourself psychic, if you don't use that word, if you don't relate to what psychic is all about, but you read tarot or you want to read tarot, you're in very, very good company, darling. There are loads of us here, so just put up a chair. You're going to be fine. Number 6, the cards don't lie. Whenever you have a reading, the cards that came up were the cards that were supposed to come up. No takebacks. And the advice that you were given is the advice that you were supposed to receive, and you need to take that advice. People have come to me about this. I've certainly received emails and comments about this. People asking me, Kellyanne, I had a reading, or I did a reading for myself, and the cards that came up and the messages that came through, I didn't resonate with it. I don't like it. It's the opposite of what I think should be happening. What do I do though? Because am I not supposed to be ingesting this reading and taking it on? And what I would say is this: I always think the cards that come through during a reading are the cards you're supposed to receive, but the translation of those cards might have been a bit of a rough translation. It might not have gone over into your psyche properly. Another thing is, it might have come a little bit early. Has anybody ever had a tarot reading that didn't make sense at the time? And then a few months down the line, they look at the reading again and they're like, oh, wow. Oh, I see. Now it's all coming together. I've had readings like that. I've done readings like that, right? So sometimes it's a little bit ahead of time for you to really understand the full meaning of the cards and what they are saying to you. And so the messages will not hit as they're supposed to. You've got to come back and reabsorb and re-ingest the meaning of the reading and see what else you can glean from it. I would always say, whenever you receive a reading, it's not one and done. Go back, excavate, okay? Dig things up again, look back over what you were told to see if anything new comes through. And another thing is, sometimes the interpretation is just a bit shoddy, or it doesn't resonate with who you are as a human being. The way that the messages are explained are heavy-handed, or they just don't go over well, and that's fine. That's okay. So I always think the cards were supposed to be the cards for you. I just don't necessarily always think the person in charge of interpretation was necessarily being able to do a good enough job of really lifting the medicine and translating it properly. Either that, or it's just come up too early in the game, you know? Go back over your readings. That is something I really, really recommend. And just an additional thing on that as well, darlings, I will say that, you know, some people ask about reshuffling, like if they lay cards out and they don't seem like the right cards, can you reshuffle? I mean, I'm not your dad, okay? You can reshuffle if you feel like it. If you want to do that, you do that. For me personally, I think it weakens a person's tarot learning, because when you reshuffle, you're giving yourself the option to get out of anything uncomfortable in your tarot study that could really propel you forward. You're saying, no, I don't want to be challenged. This looks difficult. I don't know what it means, so I'm going to reshuffle, when actually that could be a beautiful opportunity for you to learn and for you to deepen into your explorations. And you know what? If you get a reading and you feel like the entire thing was just a mess from start to finish, you don't like anything that was said, you don't feel that anything reflected you or was helpful to you, just forget about it. Just forget about it. It's fine. You are not obligated to take advice that was given to you by a reader that you feel was not doing a good job of interpreting those cards in some way, like it didn't hit you the way it needed to hit you. Let it go. Not every reading is going to be stellar. Not every reading is going to be 10 out of 10. Number 7, this is about reversals, okay? And it's really both ends of the spectrum. I've seen people say that you absolutely need to read reversals, and I've seen other people say, get rid of reversals. Reversals are nonsense. Reversals should never have come into our line of sight. We're supposed to read the cards all right ways up, and there's not supposed to be any reversals. I know that there are people that are like really gung-ho for both ends of this spectrum, okay? Full transparency, I don't read reversals, but I used to for many years, and I appreciate the beauty and the power of reversals in tarot. I just don't personally read them anymore. I evolved out of that for myself personally. I know other people that started without reading reversals and now they read reversals, okay? So there's shifts that happen in the timeline of a reader. Really, it is genuinely about what feels right for you. It's genuinely about what your instinct is telling you to do. That is something that I will say more than anything else. Reversals are fucking optional, okay? To reverse or not to reverse, that is the question, and the question can only be answered by you yourself personally. For a long time, I was really into it, and then suddenly, over about the space of a year, several years ago, I was like, I don't fucking want to do this anymore. I want to see all my cards right ways up. I feel like I can really intuit what's coming through in terms of what is a warning message or what is a blocked energy anyway. Plus, I have positions in my spreads, so I don't need reversals, because the positions will tell me where is the block, where is the weakness, where is the thing you're not seeing, you know, where is the thing that you need to address. Like, all of those things are built into the spread anyway, so I don't need reversals. And so I would rather see all of this luscious artwork right ways up. Thank you very much, okay? But for other people, it's different, and you're going to have your reasons for that. Number eight, you cannot ask tarot yes or no questions. This is something that is a preference for a great many readers, and there is a reason why, okay? When you ask tarot a closed question, a yes or no question, you are giving a hell of a lot of power to the deck and to the spread to be able to make major life decisions for you in some cases. When you ask tarot an open question, a question that starts with whereabouts or why or how or what or when or whatever, when you ask a question like that, you are leaning into your own intuition. You are only receiving clues and information and tools that could help you to make your choice. You're not asking tarot to make your choice for you. And that is why a lot of card slingers do not favor yes or no questions, because they feel reductive, because they can be disempowering, and because they can allow querents to use tarot to make up their mind for them. And very often a reader does not want to be responsible for helping a client do that, like waylaying their own sovereignty and agency in order to get tarot to tell them what to do. Like, I don't want to be responsible for that. That's why in my professional practice, I do not allow yes or no questions. I reframe the question. Is a reader allowed to ask tarot a yes or no question though? Abso-fucking-lutely. Like, who the hell is anyone to tell you that that's not possible to do? In fact, I know quite a lot of card slingers who will not answer yes or no questions from other querents, but they do ask tarot yes or no questions for themselves. Let me know down in the comments if you are such a reader who actually won't do that for others because it's too much responsibility on you and the cards, but you will ask tarot yourself a yes or no question. I know I've actually done that in my own reading practice. I'm saving the yes or no questions a little bit for me, actually, but I wouldn't use them for a querent necessarily. I just tend to find that, like, what do I need to keep in mind while I'm making this decision versus should I do this? Actually provides so much more nourishment for the querent. But is there any rule against answering a yes or no question? Absolutely not. And I do not think there's anything unethical about readers who answer yes or no questions. There is a market for that in professional card slinging. There are people that very much just want to know, should I marry this person or not? Should I take this job or not? Should I move to this country or not? That's what I want to know. And there are always going to be readers that are capable and willing to answer those yes or no questions. And I have no issue with that. So it's a spectrum of belief, but there is no way anyone can tell you that you can't answer yes or no questions. That's BS. You can do what you want with the tool. Number 9, decks should be cleansed regularly, or decks should be cleansed between querents or between uses. This is just something that certain readers believe based on their spiritual practice and their spiritual hygiene, their energy management system, right? They believe that when they work with the cards pick up vibrations that are based on the mood that was being felt by the reader when they were doing the spread, or the mood of the querent they were reading for, and they want to cleanse that shit. They want to, take the deck back to neutral, energetically speaking. There are many, many readers that do this, and there are many, many readers that fucking do not do this and never would do this, because to them, the deck is cardboard and they feel fine about the deck, and there is no energy on the deck. The deck does not have its own auric field, and they don't have an auric field in their way of doing things, so they just don't cleanse their decks. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. It doesn't make them less of a reader because they don't cleanse their decks. It doesn't mean that their decks are dirty, because in their perception and in their paradigm, that isn't a thing. The deck can't get energetically dirty, and therefore they do not feel the need to cleanse it. It doesn't feel dirty. They don't feel the need to cleanse it. End of story. Also, for those readers who do cleanse their decks, you know when your deck needs cleansing. You know when you want to put your decks out in the light of a full moon, or you want to do a little smoke cleansing over them. You want to pop a little crystal on them. I cleanse my decks from time to time, but it's really in conjunction with when I feel intuitively moved to do so. I know when a deck needs cleansing, okay? And there are certain reasons why I do cleanse decks. It's not all the time, and it's not between querents. I will happily use the same deck for 3 different fucking querents, because I know personally in my practice that deck does not need cleansing, so I don't cleanse it. I don't sit around doing cleansing work just because witches on the internet think I'm being unclean and unhygienic spiritually with my decks because they're not cleansed between querents. That's between me and my decks, right? That's got nothing to do with witches anywhere. It's to do with me. Another myth that falls into this category actually is that querents should not touch your cards. That the only person that touches a reader's cards should be them. Otherwise, something has happened with the energy. The vibration has been fucked with. Again, matter of opinion, matter of experience. This is not hard science, this is metaphysics. So if you feel like that is the case, don't let anyone touch your decks. When somebody touches your deck, give them a little slap on the wrist and cleanse your deck. But I know lots of readers who allow their children to play with their decks. They allow every querent to touch their decks. They have their decks out on the side as a matter of interior decoration, okay? People come for a fucking dinner party. They all put their grubby mitts all over the decks and it's not a problem. That doesn't make you any less of a reader. Number 10. You should not make a profit from tarot. You should not charge for tarot readings. This is some BS. For real. Have you got any idea for a kickoff how many countless hours of sweat and dedication and time I have given to perfecting the tool of tarot? How many books I've purchased, how many resources I've imbibed, how many hours I've spent tarot journaling, how many hours I've spent answering questions from novices in my comment sections, via email, in the forums, you know, on Facebook, on Instagram. How many hours I've spent helping people that are learning the tool to come to proficiency and understand tarot in a meaningful way. Like, so much effort has gone into me being where I am now. Anybody that resents me making money doing readings, your exits are here, here, and here. I mean, what can I tell you? That's really all I've got to say about it. I mean, I resent you. I resent you. I think your attitude towards me is hostile. And so my attitude towards you is hostile in return, darling. When we look at the industry of tarot, it's very largely the domain of women, femmes, queers, and people from different intersections of marginalized groups. All kinds of people who aren't necessarily supported by the mainstream working world and by like mainstream capitalist society might use tarot as a way to make a living or subsidize their living. Let's really think about what the fuck somebody is saying when they're saying that tarot readers should work for free. In that case, they're telling on themselves. They are telling on themselves. They lack empathy when they say that. They lack actual nuance when they say that. Pay your readers. Pay your readers. If you have a reading from somebody and they want nothing in return from you, at least give them some great feedback or offer them a donation, a show of appreciation in some small way, however you can give back. If it's not money, let it be flowers, right? If it's not flowers, let it be something else. Let that reader know that you were thinking of them or you appreciate them. You appreciate what they did for you. When their reading comes to pass, let them know. Shoot them a text. Just say, hey, you know, like what you gave me in that reading, it was medicinal and that medicine came to pass. Honestly though, pay your readers. Like, pay your readers. Fuel and food ain't getting any cheaper out here, okay? Darlings, thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to receive a tarot reading from me, a paid reading, yes indeed, because I am worth that coin, then you can go down below to click the link to my online store and you can find a reading that works for you. I have lots of exciting templates, or you can just go with a custom design, whatever you want to do. I can make something perfect for your needs. Please slap a like on this video before you leave to appease the algorithm gods and leave a comment with any of your observations and ideas from watching this video. Check out my tarot techniques playlist here on YouTube for an untold shit ton of free resources to help you nail your relationship with the cards and get that tarot learning where you need it to be. Much love until next time, and thank you to my patrons for voting for this video. Blessed be. Mwah, 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 mwah.